Hi, my name is Kayla. And first I just want to say I'm super excited to be giving this class at this festival. It's just incredible, a really amazing festival. And before we dive in, I want to just take a few moments to take a few deep breaths. This festival is all about bringing together Torah and consciousness and mindfulness all together into one beautiful creation. And so let's begin a Torah class with becoming present and coming into this moment and really being open up to receiving whatever you're meant to receive tonight. So just closing your eyes for a moment and inhaling in through your nose, holding it for a few moments at the top, and then through your mouth, release. And then we're going to do this one more time, but this time with your exhale, I want you to think about anything that you want to release from today, any stress, any thoughts, any preoccupation that you want to just let go of for this moment right now. You're releasing with this exhale. So inhaling in through your nose, and exhaling it out. Okay. Okay, so let's start with this Torah class now. So the Torah class, the class that I'm giving is called Serving God Selflessly, Where Do I Fit In? And we have these seemingly two opposing spaces, these two opposites, right? Like the space of no self versus the space of self where I am. And they're both really, really important. And it's a huge paradox. And in Judaism, you know, we have a multitude of paradoxes, and somehow we find a way for them to come together. So this is what we are going to attempt to do tonight. And we're going to do this through exploring the concept of bittul, exploring the experience of bittul. Okay, so the topic of bittul is a really, really important topic, and it's actually one that I'm really fascinated by, I think because I have struggled with it, or I thought, I've got there and then I didn't. A bittul is a huge experience for the high and the holy. But it's something that I think a lot of us struggle with. Like, where do we put ourselves in the selfless service of God? And let's actually just first, before we begin, define just a dry definition of the term bittul, of the word bittul. It means nullification. And some of you guys may have heard it in the context of bittul Torah, where we don't want to waste any time. We should be learning Torah all the time. And some of you might have heard it in bittul atzmi or bittul hayeshut, which is where we're going to be focusing tonight, meaning self-nullification or nullifying self-centeredness or ego or identity in the service of God. So this topic is spoken about a lot in Torah, and especially in Chassidut, as this incredible, incredible thing that we're meant to attain in serving God in the right way. And it's meant to be really good for us too. And I think that that's kind of where it gets really misunderstood, because most of us, we learn that it's, this is great. We have to serve God selflessly. And then we hear, okay, self-nullification. So a lot of us kind of go straight towards, I guess I have to erase myself, right? I guess I need to just really empty myself out if I want to serve God in the way that I'm meant to. If I want to serve God on this highest level, then that's what it has to be. And so it has a really, really bad reputation, bittul, and I want to come and change that and kind of flip the paradigm on its head and understand it from a new space where it also, feels like we're serving God from a place where it also just makes us feel alive as well. Okay. So really before we go, and I actually want to just say the overall thesis of the thesis, where I'm taking us on this journey so you guys can follow me a little bit. And that is, bittul is not an experience of low self-esteem or nothingness. Rather, it actually requires a healthy sense of self, a healthy sense of self-worth and self-esteem. And in addition to that, there's even a little bit of actual self that's involved in all of this as well. So we're going to get there. But let's begin with where most of us actually think, what most of us actually think bittul is, mostly because we haven't actually learned about what it is. So a lot of us think that it's, again, this emptying of the self, this completely handing yourself over to God, really like becoming this empty, empty, empty vessel and just asking God to kind of fill you up. And personally, I know I've definitely been there in my life, and times where I just really just took away my own experience of self, and I was like, okay, God, please just fill me up with you, because I don't know what to be, and I don't know how to be, and I don't want to be me. And so I'm going to call this a fake, false, pseudo sense of bittul. Why? Because it actually comes from really low self-esteem, right? If someone's coming and they're saying, I don't want to be me, so God, just, fill me up with you, then that's really coming from a place of very, very low self-esteem. And in this sense, there's actually an element of even codependence that you can see happening with God, where you're saying, like, I can't hold my own self-worth, and so I'm asking you, God, to give me worth instead, to give me my worth instead of holding it on my own. So already, intuitively, we can know that this just can't be the experience of bittul. Like, the utmost experience of serving God cannot be that we feel so bad about ourselves. It cannot be hating ourselves. And God forbid, it cannot be that we turn into nothing, right? God wants us to serve him with joy, and so there's no way that this experience of really low self-esteem has anything to do with bittul, serving God selflessly. And I want to add an even deeper point to that not only is it not bittul, but actually having low self-esteem and serving God from this space has the opposite effect of what bittul is really trying to attain. So to explain that, I want to go a little bit into psychology and understand the psyche a little bit, and what low self-esteem really is and low self-worth really is. So I was once in a Torah class where the rabbi was talking, I don't even remember about what, but what he said stuck out to me so much because it rung true. He said that somebody with low self-esteem and somebody with low self-worth is one of the most selfish people out there. Now that's a really, really strong statement, and it took me a while to process, but I want to really understand what he's saying and understand it in this context, because there's a lot of truth there. So when somebody has low self-esteem, they have no self-worth rooted within themselves, right? Their self-esteem is not strong within themselves. And therefore, what does this have them do? It has them look externally. It has them look outside of them for this sense of self-worth, rather than holding it from within them, because they intrinsically know that they're worthy. So the first thing that happens when you have really, really low self-esteem is that a lot of times you're kind of in your mind ruminating, thinking about, does this person like me? Did I say that wrong? I'm not good enough. A lot of things that, are just not fun to be thinking about, but they're just negative, constant loops in your mind. And so first and foremost, it's taking up a lot of space in your mind. That experience kind of creates just constant thought about yourself, albeit negative, but still thought about yourself, always happening. And then the second thing that happens is, like we said before, that because you don't have this internal sense of self-worth from within, you're going to be looking externally, and you're going to be subconsciously a lot of the time asking others to be kind of giving you validation, giving you that worthiness, because you can't give it to yourself. And this also almost demands a space, right? This also demands others to kind of put their attention onto you in that way. And so we can see that when you're in this space of low self-worth, and low self-esteem, which a lot of us think is self-nullification or bittul, it actually does the opposite from what bittul is trying to attain. Bittul, something that's really translated as selflessness, right? The absence of self. When you have low self-esteem, everything's about you, because you're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to prove your worthiness all around you, because you don't actually know it. Okay. So we know, and I actually just want to say one star, asterisk, a point, just saying that in no way, talking about somebody's actions when they have low self-esteem and the way that their psyche protects them is in no way, there's no way them doing it maliciously, and it's an extremely natural thing for the psyche and the ego to do, and every single person does it. I do it, you do it, everyone does it. All human beings have a small element, an element of shame or insecurity inside of them, and the way that sometimes the way that the psyche really deals with this to protect itself is to ask for that worthiness elsewhere, because it wants to feel worthy and it asks for that space elsewhere. So in no way am I trying to shame the shame, God forbid. We should be looking at this part of ourselves with a lot of love and a lot of compassion. But we're bringing it here to just understand that, in no way is low self-esteem and feeling like nothing a holy thing, right? In no way is it helping us serve God in any better way. Dafka, it makes us take up a lot more space and negative space at that. Okay, so now we know what bittul is not. We've kind of just debunked that whole entire paradigm that a lot of us may have grown up with or just internalized over the course of our lives. And we know that bittul is not low self-esteem because it creates the opposite. And therefore, we can deduce from that the opposite of low self-esteem is what bittul truly is. Okay, the opposite of low self-esteem is a healthy sense of self-worth, a healthy self-esteem. And that is crucial in the experience of attaining bittul. Okay, so we're going to go into that now. And before we do, I want to actually go into the Hasidic definition of what bittul is so we can understand it a little bit more from a Hasidic perspective, which always kind of takes the real deep-rooted secrets of everything and brings this beautiful and alive and compassionate and loving way of seeing Torah. So I'm going to read a quote. This is from an introduction of a Sikha by the Lubavitcher Rabbi in Parshat Vayetza. And it talks about bittul. This was last week's Parsha. It talks about bittul. And it says, bittul means to go beyond oneself and forget one's ego, but the intent is self-transcendence, not self-nullification. The person leaves his personal identity behind, but rather than being left empty, he takes on a new, higher identity. So this is crazy. This totally turns the paradigm on its head, creates a whole entire new way of looking at it. And it's saying, overall, this has nothing to do with self-nullification. This has nothing to do with being empty. Rather, we're actually becoming something new. We're becoming a new identity. And what is that identity? We're transcending ourselves. Okay, this is remarkable. It's a whole new way of looking at this. Okay, so bittul is really this embodiment of the knowledge that you're not separate from the divine. It's the embodiment of the oneness of God and all of infinity and all that there is. It's the disillusion of the illusion that you and anything else and everything else in this world is anything but God. Okay, so we know that it's not a shrinking of ourselves. It's actually an expansion, a birthing of a new self. So how do we achieve this? How do we achieve this new transcendent self? We achieve it through tapping into our own divine godliness that is within each and every one of us. So first, let's just go back to this new paradigm that Chassidus is creating, that Chassidut is creating, and it's this expansion rather than a shrinking. And Chassidut always does this, especially Chabad Chassidut comes in, and one of the biggest points in Chabad is that rather than fighting the darkness, we're just going to add in a little bit of light. And we can use that approach here as well. So rather than, pushing aside our ego, becoming nothing, emptying ourselves of any part of ourselves and every part of ourselves, we're actually just stepping into our divinity rather than making ourselves really just nothing. We're looking for the divine, for the God inside of us, okay? Which is just this whole beautiful switch. And so we're not attaining bittul through putting ourselves down, but we're attaining bittul through lifting ourselves up. It's not a dismissal of yourself. It's realizing that there is something so much larger than you going on, and that you are inherently a part of that huge thing that is going on. You are inherently a part of this divinity that exists and that is all of reality. So from here, from this space where you can see the own divine spark within you, can see God within you, then you can tap in and connect to the oneness and the divinity and the God that is all around you. And I want to go back to a space of low self-esteem, because I think that a lot of people who have low self-esteem can still understand and see that God is everything, right? it's pretty obvious when we look at the world and we look at the interconnectedness of everything. And so when you have low self-esteem, you definitely have the capacity to do that. But what you do not have the capacity to do is allow yourself to be a part of it, right? Because if you have low self-esteem, if you have low self-worth, if you have no worthiness within, how can you allow yourself to be a part of God, right? You're like, okay, that's beautiful, that's God, but I'm over here. I'm not that holy. I'm not that divine, right? I'm not that worthy of being a part of God. And so it's essential that we tap into our own divinity, our own piece of God within us, our own godly divine soul, in order to allow ourselves to actually become a part of God that's outside of us as well. That is the interconnectedness of everything, that is everything. And then and in addition to that, it's also from this space of recognizing your own divinity that you can begin also seeing the divinity everywhere else in the world. And this is a concept that the Baal Shem Tov teaches us, that the world is our mirror, right? The Baal Shem Tov brings it down into a concept that says that when you see something that you don't like in another, that piece is actually within yourself. And it's like actually a chesed, it's a kindness that God is showing us, our faults this way through others, through the reflection of others. But it also works in a positive sense as well. So when we see something positive outside of us, we also know that that positive thing can also really be living within us. And it works it's vice versa as well. So what we also recognize within ourselves, we can begin recognizing externally as well. So when we begin tapping into and recognizing our own divine spark, we have the ability to begin seeing it everywhere and outside of us, and begin recognizing and seeing, oh my gosh, this is God, and this is God, and this person is God, and this person is God, and this person is God, and it's incredible. And you're actually a part of it as well. Okay. So now we know that bittul is actually this space where we need to have a healthy sense of self-worth rooted in our divine soul and our own godliness. And then we can actually tap into the oneness of the divinity that is everything and that is this whole entire universe. But the next question is, what about our ego? What about our identity? What about the personality that I have kind of coming into this world? What am I meant to do with that? And I heard this idea from a podcast, Human and Holy, and it's this amazing idea that really brings it all together. And it quotes the Alter Rebbe, the first Rabbi of Chabad, who wrote a mimer on a Gemara. So let's go into this Gemara really, really quickly and understand how we can bring our own selves into this experience. So overall, the Alter Rebbe says that bittul actually can't happen unless the process begins with an element of yeshut, meaning self-concern, identity, selfhood. So in order to reach this level where we become one, we kind of like melt into the oneness of God, we actually need to start this process with an element of self. And let's understand that. So there's a Gemara that talks about how a Talmud Chacham is meant to serve God. And it says that a Talmud Chacham needs an eighth of an eighth, so 1/64th of arrogance or a sense of identity in the service of God. And then it compares this 1/64th of yeshut, of identity, and arrogance or space that you take up, to a husk on a kernel of wheat. Okay, a husk on a kernel of wheat. Let's understand the husk. The husk is something that protects the kernel of wheat, and then we take it off before we actually make bread. So it's not used in the bread, but it's there to protect the kernel of wheat. So the Alter Rebbe comes in and says that this 1/64th of selfhood is necessary to begin the process of serving God selflessly and ultimately reaching and attaining a level of bittul. What does this mean? What does this mean? We begin our journey with being super tapped into who we are, being super tapped into, oh, these are my gifts, these are my talents, I love doing this, I know this is how I'm unique in this world. And we begin our journey tapped into that, knowing what we're good at, knowing how to shine, knowing what lights us up and how to light other people up. And that's kind of how we begin our journey towards serving God. But then what happens ultimately, just like the husk, which we take off, right? We take it off the kernel before we turn it into bread. The selfhood, the sense of self-identity or ego, also falls off. It also comes off, and it's only the beginning of the process. It's not the end. It serves as a protector for our divine soul, for that godliness within as it's waking up and as it's getting stronger and stronger and revealing itself even more. But then eventually your own godliness, your own piece of God within you comes in and says to your selfhood, I'm going to take it from here. I got this, right? Like, I'm so ready to go out and step into something so much greater than me and become a part of it. And then naturally, this selfhood kind of falls away. We take it away. There's like a natural separation that happens. I also just want to mention that the Alter Rebbe does say that when you hold on to this husk for too long, when you hold on to this identity or selfhood or arrogance or taking up space for too long, then we don't ever reach the godliness. We never reach the kernel inside. But what happens on the other side when you don't have the husk at all? The kernel can't survive the weather. And so it actually needs that beginning protection of selfhood in order to ultimately become what it's meant to and in order to ultimately serve God selflessly. And then once you get to that point, you're ready to make bread, you're ready to achieve that level of bittul. So we know that our own selfhood, our own talents, our own preferences and uniqueness is actually part of this process towards bittul. Okay, one final word before we do a few minutes of meditating at the very end. We're speaking about this whole entire process of bittul and that it's so important to our service for God, but why? Like, how is it important in our service to God? What's really the point of it all, serving God selflessly? So what's the point of this world, right? The point of this world is to reveal more and more godliness in it. We are here to open our eyes to God everywhere, okay? And so it's not necessarily just an experience that you feel between you and God and between you and yourself. It's an experience that you can really bring down into the world, into reality all around you, and especially to the people who you're interacting with all day and every day. And I want to bring one last note by the fifth Chabad Rabbi, the Rebbe Rashab, and he actually speaks about bittul in a social sense, in a social setting in society, really, really in depth, and brings in this beautiful perspective about how we can achieve bittul in a society where we're all so different, right? Like, how are we supposed to see this oneness when all of us are so extraordinarily different? It's very, very difficult. But the Rebbe Rashab says that the diversity of humanity does not negate the oneness of God at all, and it does not negate the experience of bittul. He says that within our reality, within our universe, there's a truth, and the truth is one of inter-inclusion, that within one entity exists its opposite, okay? Within every entity exists its opposite, that both of these opposites are from the exact same source. And that it's holding these opposites together that actually makes something whole, okay? So when we hold the range, the multitude of people, the range of people, the diversity of life that exists in reality today, we're holding the wholeness of God. We're holding the wholeness of reality and of the universe. And all of that comes from one singular point. I like to think of it like a prism. A prism is this one point that then spreads out into a multitude, a range of different colors. And no one would point to the yellow and say, oh, this is yellow. The prism is just creating yellow, or just green, or just blue, or just purple. No, we know that prism, that one singular point, is creating all of those colors. And so we can see humanity in the exact same way. We can see the diversity of humanity all being an expression of the wholeness of God coming from that one singular point. And so I bless us with being able to step out into the world, first and foremost, once we see our own divinity, being able to see the divine in others, and dafka, especially in those who are different to us, in those who are opposite to us, because that is where the wholeness of reality lies. That's where the wholeness of God really lies. And it's a beautiful, beautiful and extraordinary experience when we can allow ourselves to see that and to be a part of that. Okay, we are going to end our last few minutes with just some breathing and a meditation and bringing everything kind of into an embodied space, because Torah is meant to be brought down into the body, be brought down into this life and in this world. And we're going to do that right now. So if you guys just want to get comfortable where you're sitting, you can close your eyes and allow yourself to slowly just relax into the space where you're sitting in the chair or the ground, and with your next exhale, let yourself just really be supported here. And just take a moment to tap into this present moment. And it's really in the present moment where we can also allow ourselves to experience this oneness of God, this oneness of divinity that exists. Because when you're in the present moment, your awareness is here. You almost merge into the present moment. You almost merge into the oneness of the moment. Rather than being stuck in your mind and in your head, you are so here and you are so alive in the divinity. And so becoming present is a beautiful way of actually practicing this experience of bittul. And you're just gonna notice your breath and the inhale and the exhale. Take a few moments to become present here. Bring your awareness to how your lungs and your belly expand and retract. And as you're breathing, there's a beautiful cycle, a beautiful relationship that's happening between you and life and between you and God right now. As you breathe in, you are breathing in God's breath of life into your body, into your very being. And you let that breath of life, you let that divinity just consume you and flow through your whole entire being until it fills you up and until it merges with you. And then on your exhale, you are giving God back a piece of you. You are gifting God back a piece of you. And so we're going to continue this cycle where we are inhaling in God. We're inhaling in the divinity outside of us. And we're allowing that to help us tap into finding our own divinity. And then we're going to exhale and gift our own divinity back to God, back to the world. And so continuing this cycle just for a few more minutes, a few more moments, inhaling in and allowing that space, that breath of God, that breath of life to just really fill you up. Allow it to awaken that own spark of God, that own godliness within you. And then giving it back to the world. And then as you continue this process, and as these energies begin to flow together, they begin to merge. These energies begin to merge of your own divinity and the divinity outside of you. It's all the same thing. And so allow this process, this cycle of energy to come in and out really smoothly as it flows through you. This divine energy coming in. And as it intermingles with you, you're bringing it back out. And it's all one. And so breathing here for a few more moments. And you're going to slowly come back to the present and open your eyes. Let's take one last deep breath together, inhaling in through our nose and exhaling out through our mouth. And this is a practice that you can do. I got it from a teacher of mine, a really amazing mentor of mine, that you can do whenever. Just tapping into this beautiful cycle and relationship that is always and constantly happening between us and God, the divinity outside of us, and beginning to understand how it's really just one cycle. It's just really one thing. Okay, thank you guys so much. This is amazing, exploring this topic together. I hope we can really just take these ideas and bring them out to the world and remember that we are all pieces of God. We all have this intrinsic self-worth and worthiness that is so divine, and that's what connects each and every one of us. That is what can allow us to become one with the divine. So thank you guys again. If you enjoyed this and you want to learn more Torah with me or join some of my classes or work with me one-on-one if you are a woman, then please be in touch with me through Instagram. It's Kayla Miryam. and have beautiful, beautiful nights, and keep learning more Torah, keep bringing your light into the world. Thank you guys so much.